We have 9 o'clock.
Do. When I read that, when I read her email, yeah.
I saw it in the Smile today. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is the Senate Education Committee. I have 9 o'clock and we are going to get started. Before we do, please rise and we're going to say Pledge of Allegiance. Senator General.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first bill this morning is Senate Bill 140, and I will call the sponsor to introduce it, Senator Carson. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning, bright sunny morning, members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of, representing Senate District 14, comprising the towns of Londonderry, Hudson, and Auburn. And I have for your consideration this morning Senate Bill 140, relative to establishing a program for the recruitment of educators. And this bill establishes a program in the Department of Education to provide stipends or grants to students to reduce the financial barriers entering the educator workforce. Madam Chair, as you know, one of the many workforce issues we face as a state is with respect to our shortage of educators in our kindergarten through 12 schools. I'm sure you've heard from your districts about this, and it has been widely covered in local New Hampshire media as well. One of the roles I see us playing in the legislature is to help remove barriers for people to go into this profession. And the idea before you is an attempt at addressing one piece of the puzzle in making it easier to get that critical component of becoming a professional educator. The residential classroom experience that is so important for success as a teacher. This was the idea behind a similar program that was passed into law in Colorado just last year. When we help our future educators succeed, we help the most important people in this equation, our students. We do this by ensuring we have the very best in our classrooms. I'm bringing this idea forward on behalf of some educators that are here today who will be testifying as to how this will help to support that pipeline of students into the education profession so that we can make sure our students and families get the quality education they deserve from our school systems. Again, I would just like to reiterate, Madam Chair, educators, our teachers are critical to the education process. And we want the best, and we demand the best for our teachers. And I think this is a way, by creating this program, we can do this. We can do this, and we can support the students as they go through their college education and encourage them to go into teaching. So at that point, Madam Chair, I will conclude my testimony, and there are folks here that can answer the questions, I think, better than I can.
Okay.
Although I think most of you do know that I am a teacher myself. I teach at the college level. So believe me, I understand quite what teachers are going through today and how difficult it is. So again, I hope you can look favorably on this legislation. And if you need any help, I'll be more than happy to help you work through this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Do we have any questions from members of, yes, Senator General?
Thank you, Senator Carson. Just
Thank you.
one quick question, and I might have missed it. Is this strictly for public schools, Or is it for teachers that are going through maybe a Christian school program or private and then going to work into something other than a public school?
Thank you for the question. I believe this is for any teacher. We do know we need teachers in our private schools. We know we need teachers in our charter schools. It's about the teachers, and it's about getting these students into this pipeline of going from college into teaching. That's what matters.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Lang?
I just have two quick questions.
Sure.
So as I'm reading the bill on line 22 of the bill, it talks about candidates storing their clinical experience. And I'm trying to understand what was meant by that. Is it student teach? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Student
that-
teaching,
Student teaching.
and as they call it, clinical. Is that the proper?
That is the term of art, I believe.
Thank you. Follow up question.
Follow up?
And then on page 2 of the bill in section 4, if I read that language right, are we basically prorating the grant based on the amount of funds to the amount of applicants?
I am looking,
So it's the section that starts, if the amount appropriated for the department to use
okay.
education recruitment grant, blah, 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 is insufficient. Is that a prorated, is that what we're talking about, prorating the grants so that if we have more applicants and funds, we can adjust accordingly to cover
Senator,
something?
I cannot answer that question.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm sure someone, if someone from the department is here who would be administrating this, they would be able to answer that
Thank you.
question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
We're going to hear from Irving Richardson and Megan Tuttle. Have to. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Megan Tuttle. I'm president of NEA New Hampshire. We represent about 17,000 educators across the state, and I'm an 18-year veteran 8th grade social studies teacher. On leave right now. So as Senator Carson mentioned in her introduction, we know we're facing an educator shortage in the country, here in New Hampshire as well as all across the country. Other states are taking proactive steps in order to help remove financial barriers to becoming an educator, and we don't want to be left behind. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. The committee that was meeting this past year to study the teacher shortage looked at a lot of different solutions that other states have either contemplated or passed. One of those solutions in Colorado was an educator stipend to help ease the financial burdens of student teachers during their time student teaching or a residency program. There are two different types of programs, getting to Senator Lang's question earlier a little bit. Sometimes you do one semester of student teaching. Some programs have a year-long residency. So it just depends on the type of program you're in. During the teacher shortage committee, there was testimony of superintendents who stated how critical, in-classroom experience was, also a predictor of success and ability to sustain the early career years as an educator. Something I just wanted to highlight before I have Irv go, not all of the student teachers currently are your traditional college age students. So we have a lot of people coming into the profession later on. They might have had a career, they're coming back in later, they're getting their certification, they still have to student teach. When you're student teaching, you don't get paid to do that. You're paying the college to do that and still taking classes at the same time. My last 3 student teachers that I had when I was teaching in Pembroke were those types of people. So they had to give up the jobs that they had in order to student teach. They're doing everything a teacher does in the classroom when you're student teaching. You're planning the lessons, you're teaching the classes, you're grading the papers, having the parent conference, everything that a teacher with certification does, they're doing. So it does take up a lot of time. It's not part-time. Just a few things to look at. The average rent in Manchester in 2022 for a 1-bedroom was $1,487. A 2-bedroom, the average was about $1,700, according to apartmentlist.com. That's a lot when you're not getting paid. So unless you have somebody supporting you or independently wealthy, it does put a burden on student teachers. Having a little breathing room, having the stipend is going to help that. When I went through student teaching 20 some odd years ago when I was 10 maybe, I worked full time at the YMCA in Keene. I worked, full time after school and nights. I did what I needed to do in order to pay my rent, to pay my bills and do everything, while still paying Keene State to get my certification. So this is something that we really do think is going to help attract teachers to New Hampshire. We think it's going to help retain teachers in New Hampshire, which is really what we want to do. We have some amazing colleges in New Hampshire for teaching, and we want to make sure that we're keeping the people who go through student teaching here and not leaving to go back to their home states, things like that. So I'll let Irv finish up. Thank you.
Questions?
I can take any questions or I can wait till the end.
Wait to the end.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on SB 140. For the record, I'm Irving Richardson. I'm the coordinator for public education and school support for NEA New Hampshire. I also teach in the educational doctorate program at Southern New Hampshire University. And as I was preparing this, I realized it's 45 years of experience, which surprised me as a classroom teacher, a principal, a cooperating teacher working at state departments, and at the national level as director of shared leadership for the Council of Chief State School Officers. I also have a doctoral degree in teacher education and school improvement from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Like Megan, I'm here to speak in favor of this bill because I think it will help make the teaching profession more attractive and reduce some of the burdens for people who are wanting to pursue that career pathway. One of the findings regarding teacher education is really pretty commonsensical, and you're welcome to borrow the book, but let me summarize it. That basically the better you are prepared to teach, the better you teach, the more you feel like you have a sense of efficacy and you're more willing to stay. So this is allowing people to stay and focus on their student teaching during that experience. As Megan mentioned, currently, when an educator at a college or university or at a program like UVEI, candidates have to pay tuition to work at becoming a teacher. And part of that education is the time-tested strategy of working with someone to teach you how to become a teacher. I was 21 when I did my student teaching with an amazing woman named Miriam Selly in Lebanon, New Hampshire. And I was fortunate in my career to be recognized as a state teacher of the year and a national educator. And when I look at those awards, the things for which they recognized me were the things that Miriam instilled in me as a 21-year-old during my student teaching. So doing some numbers, during student teaching, you're basically with that cooperating teacher for about 35 hours, plus you're learning to write lesson plans and assess student work, going to faculty meetings for the first time. So it's roughly 35 to 50 hours a week of learning to become a teacher for those 16 weeks. And I worked in the dining hall while I did my student teaching, but that didn't help me become a better teacher. So candidates who receive financial aid by this bill can focus for those 16 weeks on just learning to teach and teach well. As Megan mentioned, there's current information about a teacher shortage, and one of our challenges in this profession is we don't have up-to-date, accurate data. But going back to DOE statistics from 2018, 2019, there were 580 candidates who graduated from education preparation programs. And hopefully this number will increase if this bill passes. If these numbers were to remain the same as they were in 2018, 2019, there would be 1,060 candidates licensed over a 2-year period. These candidates would have had to have done their student teaching. We also know that 69% of all graduates or undergrads at UNH receive some type of financial aid. So if those percentages of all the students at UNH hold true for teaching candidates, which we don't have that information, but if it holds true, then this grant would not support all of them and would need to be prorated. And as a final note, I would want the experts who work on these things to ensure that if this bill passes and people receive financial aid, that it does receive the grant, it doesn't adversely affect their ability to get financial aid to continue to pay tuition. So this would be as if they were working a separate job, not, oh, you got this grant, therefore it's going to cost you more to go to college. Thank you for this opportunity, and we're open for questions.
Thank you. Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Senator Ward, and thank you both for coming this morning. It's great to hear that you did your student teaching in Lebanon.
Yes,
or
I know.
Lebanon, so yeah,
School's closed now, but,
it is, but so.
and I taught in Tilton or Northfield, and that's closed too, so.
Well, we
Not-
could.
wait a minute,
Wait a
I'm
minute,
not sure I
so
should
we
go
did a
there.
consolidation.
Union Sanborn School, we had a great,
Union in Lebanon. So that's great. So two things. One is a statement. In emergency medical services in the last 2 years, throughout the country and specifically in 2 parts of New Hampshire, they've been using what they call earn to learn programs, which is actually paying EMT students a salary while they're in class learning to become EMTs, and there is a pipeline for them directly to the workforce from there. One is up in the Lakes region, and the others are in the 2 major cities, Nashua and Manchester. So we're starting to see some success from that. And I see this lining up and looking a lot of the same way, because that is a stress when you're trying to, you're trying to work and you're trying to go to school to, craft your way to where you want to be in education. So thank you. Second thing is, on page 1, section 4, line 29, just a question. In order to qualify to participate in the stipend program, a student must be eligible and placed as a student teacher in a public school or community agency as a candidate working towards initial teaching certificate. Just curious, what would you define as a community agency?
Thank you for the question. I'm thinking something, anywhere where you would need the certification. So an Easter Seals program, potentially, something like that. Where it's a residency program, but you can still be a teacher in them.
Okay.
And
early childhood care where I'd need to be certified as a preschool educator that's run.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
thank you. Could I add one thing to that? I'm sorry if that's
Senator
okay.
Lang?
I understand what student teaching is, but what is a professional educator preparation program or a pre-educator preparation program? What are those programs that we're talking about?
I don't know if Steve is going to speak to this, but the Department of Education approves programs, so I couldn't just open a preparation program. I would have to get it approved for the state if they're going to offer a state license for teaching. So there are things like UNH, RIV, SNU, Upper Valley Educator Institute are approved programs through the state.
I'll talk to the Board of Ed. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is Steve Appleby here?
Yes.
That was good timing. That's all right.
Traffic jam. Good morning, Senators. For the record, Steve Appleby, Director of Educator Support and Higher Education at the New Hampshire Department of Education. Thought I would come express some support and answer any questions and make a couple of points. So the several technical points I wanted to make, the first one was the way the bill is currently written, the definition of educator excludes certain groups of prospective teachers, such as reading writing specialists, librarians, math specialists. Those folks are excluded from being able to take advantage of this, so that might be something to consider. I also want to make the point that the way the $5 million would fund approximately 555 student teachers over the 2 years, and that seems to be about in line with how many graduate from our programs who would fall into the categories covered by the bill. We see, per the federal Title II report, about 580 per year gain initial licensure. However, some of those are out of state. They graduate, for example, from St. Anselm College, and then they go to Massachusetts and get licensed. Likewise, some of those folks get initial licensure in areas outside of this bill, such as school psychologist. So that 555, and then of course it's the Pell eligible piece. Not everyone who graduates is Pell eligible. So that number seems to be about right. So I wanted to make that point. And then lastly, Senator Lang, you had a question about professional educator preparation programs. So the state board approves colleges to train teachers and other educators. And those are what we call professional educator preparation programs. And if the state board approves a program, the Bureau of Educator Credentialing, which is one of my programs, then does not do the in-depth review of that teacher application that they would from someone just coming in off the street. And those programs cover the pedagogy and the content requirements for the endorsement in question that the person is applying for. And the state board approves that program after a thorough review by peers as well as the state board. So that's what that is. We have 12 institutions currently that offer programs that are approved by the state board, and they range from our largest Keene State to our smallest Antioch College. So happy to answer any questions.
Senator Lang.
So those professional educator preparatory programs are either someone may have a 4-year degree but not in education, and it covers that gap basically between what they learned in their either business or private life that over to become an educator, and it's programs that cover those gaps basically.
So it runs the gamut from the traditional 18-year-old goes off to college into a teacher program and spends their 4 years. It runs from that full length to a more of a certification only to fill in those gaps, perhaps in pedagogy.
Thank you.
Right. And one other point I did want to make as well that wasn't brought up by any of the previous speakers to keep in mind is that not only is the accommodating field experience unpaid, or the clinical as it's written here unpaid, but the student also has to pay the college for the credits that they gain from the experience. So really, and being the father of 3 daughters, one of whom is in education, and knowing many of her friends, you know, a lot of these kids who are 22 years old, we talk about student debt. Well, they have to take a semester off from a job to student teach, and they still have to pay tuition. So it's really a double whammy.
Follow up?
So my question on, I don't know if you heard my question on section 6 about the funding, and it talks about if the state fiscal year funding is insufficient to fully fund the stipends and grants, total number of eligible students, Is that a proration? Is that what that does? It talks about prorating the funds so that if we have more applicants and funds, we'll prorate it and everyone will get a little bit less, but we'll satisfy everybody.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's my understanding from the writers of the bill.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 2 others, but they do not want to speak in support of the program. Jerry Frew and Barry Christina. Do we have anybody else who has anything to say? Maybe Senator Fenton would like to read the
I'd be happy to.
Khan's testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. For the record, I am Senator Donovan Fenton, District 10 in New Hampshire, and I have the honor to read a memo from Senator Jay Kahn. Dear Chairman Ward, I'm writing in support of Senator Carson's SB 140, relative to establishing a program for the recruitment of educators. Over this past fall, I, Jay Kahn, chaired the committee to study New Hampshire teacher shortages and recruitment incentives, with which you are intimately familiar as a member. The study committee aggressively approached the topic and arrived at some early conclusions to address the need for qualified educators and support staff to fill vacancies. Several observations relate directly to SB 140 legislation. The number of students in education majors has declined significantly over the past 10 years. New Hampshire school superintendents feel the tightening labor market and say this is the toughest hiring cycle they've ever experienced. The rate of retirees has moved upward during the pandemic. Education majors face higher costs and lower returns. Entering salaries are lower than most degree-required professions, and the costs in a student's senior year are significantly higher than for other students due to several background checks prior to employment, credentialing exams, and foregone income in a student's senior year when student teaching hours and preparation consume one's days. Other states facing the same education preparation costs and enrollment declines have begun paying student teachers. Paid internships have become an important incentive for many fields looking to attract college graduates. This isn't the case for education in New Hampshire. SB 140 directly addresses the barriers to attracting more New Hampshire college graduates into New Hampshire school classrooms. For these reasons, the Senate Education should recommend ought to pass on SB 140. Several changes will accelerate placing the appropriated funds towards its intended purpose. And Section 1, change the definition to eligible students means a student enrolled in an approved program of preparation and completing their field-based experience in a New Hampshire school. Section 1, 2B, provide grants to fund stipends for first certificate candidates. This will enable associate degree paraprofessionals, bachelor degree teachers, and master's degree specialists to afford taking 16 weeks to complete their practicums. Section 1.3, replace the Department of Education shall determine a percentage distribution of appropriated funds based upon the 2023-2024 eligible students placed as student teachers in New Hampshire schools by an institution of higher education authorized to offer New Hampshire Department of Education certificate programs. This distribution method is specific and won't require additional rulemaking, which would delay putting the appropriation into effect during the next academic and appropriation year. Section 2, appropriation. Add a sentence at the end. These funds shall be non-lapsing, so an institution of higher education have the option of putting the funds into effect in the 23-24, 24-25, or 25-26 academic years. If the institution feels funds are best used to incentivize students into student teaching requires a longer lead time, they need not hastily spend the funds. I regret JCon, am unable to deliver these comments and suggestions in person and greatly appreciate Senator Fenton, for bringing my comments to the committee's hearings. I will be glad to provide further assistance to the prime sponsor of the committee if needed. Thank you for your consideration. JCon, former state senator.
Thank you, Senator Fenton. Anybody else in the audience that has anything to add to this particular bill? If not, this concludes the hearing on SB 140. Do you want these two? Okay, thank you. Now we are moving on to Senate Bill 141. Let's get the thing done. And the prime sponsor is Senator Altschuler. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All set?
Yes, fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable committee members. My name is Deborah Altschuler, and I represent Senate District 24, which includes the towns of Exeter, Greenland, Hampton, Hampton Falls, Northampton, Rye, and Stratham. I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 141 to bring more accountability and transparency to the Educatum Freedom Accounts program. Currently, the EFA program has an initial income eligibility threshold of less than 300% of the federal poverty rate, which for context is $65,889 for a family of 3, $79,500 for a family of 4, and $93,120 for a family of 5. And currently, that eligibility threshold need only be met one time and has the potential of carrying over for 12 more years with absolutely no review during the life of the program. By comparison, eligibility for federal student aid does not carry over from one award year to the next. Students' families are required to apply for grants year after year. This is a familiar and basic standard to ensure that financial resources go to the people who actually need them. Lines 5 and 14 of the bill bring accountability to the award process by making eligibility annual, which is fair. On the same topic of eligibility, supporters of this program testified over and over at its introduction to the state that EFAs were critical to families for whom public school doesn't work, and that families should have the freedom to choose what options best work for their children. Public education is available to every student in New Hampshire, and there is no dispute that for a very, very small number of students, their local public school may not be the best fit. But we cannot know how anything fits without first trying it, though. For New Hampshire taxpayers to subsidize an alternative educational experience for a student, it should require families avail themselves of the educational opportunities offered to them first. This very simple requirement is reflected in lines 19 and 20 of the bill. Before opting out of public and charter school systems, take advantage of the educational opportunities in your community provided to you. We are all here to meet the needs of New Hampshire students, be stewards of taxpayer money, and be accountable to all of our citizens. Senate Bill 141 tightens up RSA 194F1, Part 6, keeping the eligibility for education freedom accounts for the truly needy and an available alternative for those students for whom public or charter school cannot meet their educational needs. I urge the committee to recommend Senate Bill 141 ought to pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? I see none. Thank you. Excellent. Now, we have a lot of people who would like to speak to this bill. Thank you for your time. Jama West. No, you can sit down and turn on the microphone so we can hear you.
Okay, James Van Ness is my name. I'm from Dorchester. I had a clarification question if I could ask first. On lines 19 and 20, it says, this is for any student who is currently attending a New Hampshire public school, including a chartered public school for a minimum of 1 year, or who is entering kindergarten first grade. I have a 5-year-old who we have started homeschooling her this year. This is her first year into school. Does she now need to go to second grade in her second year and then come out again in order to take advantage of these funds? And for my son, who didn't complete a full year of school, does he now need to re-enter the school system? And then can he take advantage of the funds once we take him back out? Or is it a go in, come out sort of situation? Is 1 year cover him? If he goes into school for 1 year, is he then covered for the next 12 years for these EFA funds?
For that, I think we have to call Senator Altshuler back and have her explain what she means if she's here. Okay, she has left. Why don't you write that down? Have you written it down? And I will find out and we can get back to you with her answer.
I had more. That was just a clarification question I had.
Okay.
So we tried my son, who is now 7 years old, in a public charter school, and he went to the school. And we live out in Dorchester, so we don't have our own school. We have to go to Canaan schools, and they don't pick our kids up at our houses or even on our roads or anywhere near our roads. They pick us up on 118 because they won't travel the side roads. So in order to get my kids to school in the first place, I have to drive them out. And some of our back roads are notoriously bad and don't get plowed until 9 a.m. in the morning. So regardless of the ability to go to school as having the public funds, we don't have the ability to get him to school in the morning a lot of times. That aside, even when we tried him in the public charter school and we did make that drive every morning down the road, it didn't fit for him. He's a highly intelligent individual, but he's a very high energy individual. And sitting in the classroom just wasn't his environment. And I know this from my personal experience. I dropped out of school in 9th grade. And then I ended up getting my bachelor's degree and my master's with a 4.0 GPA. Like, school is not necessarily the environment for everyone. And we tried it for him. We wanted the social interaction for him. The unfortunate part is he was being bullied on a pretty regular basis, to the point where my son would come home and tell me, I don't want to be me anymore. That's not an environment that I want my son to grow up in. I don't think that's fair for any child to believe that they don't want to be themselves. And he wasn't being outlandish in any way. He just didn't fit into the spectrum of things. And so we took him out. And we've enjoyed the experiences that we've had with him at home, and starting with my daughter as well. And we know that the public school system doesn't fit, one, via location, and two, just the kind of family that we are. We are world travelers. We have a lot of experiences with our children, and that's how we fund their education. That's how we grow their minds, with the experiences. And that works for us, and that has worked for us. We were homeschooling before these funds became available, but now that these funds were available, we've been able to use it in such a way that we can grow our children's minds exponentially, instead of just only managing to do with what we can with what we have. Versus we're paying these tax dollars. I will pay these tax dollars. I'm going to live in Dorchester, hopefully, until I'm 125. And I will be paying tax dollars that entire time. And I am totally fine with that. And I think it's important to fund public education, 100%. However, during the time when my children are supposed to be in the school system, using those funds for my children's education, I believe is fair. And we tried my son in school, but I did not want him to suffer through an entire year of being made fun of. I did not want him to suffer through an entire year of children telling him how he should act and who he should be. We do a lot of activities where he goes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and dance and gymnastics and ice skating. He interacts with children on a very regular basis. So we were concerned about the social aspect of homeschooling, and that is important. So we mitigated that by using those funds and allowing him to go to these programs, these 1 week, 2 week, 8 week, 16-week programs, to interact with the same students on a regular basis. He doesn't need to be friends with all of them. As we know, we work with people we don't like, and you have to learn how to do that, and it's important. However, being ridiculed on a regular basis, that's unacceptable. And in order to rise to the standard of the bullying, well, that standard is pretty high. To be bullied 3 times to the point where it gets written down and documented, that's rough for a kid of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, any age.
Okay,
It's
I'm
hard
gonna
to work in that
interrupt you
sort
for
of
a second.
Yes, ma'am.
I hear what you're saying, which I would appreciate if you could just stick with what we're saying in the bill here. Are you supporting it? And for what reason are you supporting it or opposing it?
I'm opposed to it, and specifically for lines 19 and 20 is what I'm opposing it for having to force him to go to a year of school. When we tried it, we gave it a good college try, and we didn't make it the full year because of the experiences that I'm explaining. And then also we don't have the same sort of opportunities as a lot of other people that are living in high populated areas. We live in the middle of proverbially nowhere. And so to get to school is a struggle, if we can even get them to school in the first place. So to go through that for an entire year before we decide that, oh yeah, hey, what we thought was going to work worked anyways. We enjoy the funds. We appreciate the funds. It is an awesome idea. However, this stipulation of 18 and 19, the lines 18 and 19, feel excessive. And I understand the purpose behind it to an extent, but there's a lot of families that it just doesn't meet their needs.
Okay, so you are opposing this program, and I will find out the question that you had, the clarification. I will do
thanks.
that for you. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see, here was the next one. Carla Howe.
It's me.
And there are a lot of people wanted to speak, so if you could just address the bill very succinctly, and if anybody
Absolutely.
has said something that you were going to say.
I timed
just leave
it
that.
down to, I think, right at 3 minutes. So
Great, thank you very much.
my pleasure. Thank you. Let me just get this out. Good morning, committee members. My name is Carla Howe. I'm a resident of Gilmington, a former first grade teacher in New London, New Hampshire, and a homeschooling mother of 4, ages 11 through 18. I am speaking in opposition of Senate Bill 141. I have home educated my children every year of their schooling, and I am so thankful for the people who have made these funds available to New Hampshire families. I would like to share the educational experience of one of my sons, Anderson, that he had prior to receiving EFA funds. When Anderson was in kindergarten, I knew something wasn't right. He couldn't recall letters, sounds, he couldn't recognize basic rhyming, or understand the left to right progression of text. We called the Gilmington Elementary School to have him evaluated. Gilmington's special ed team said he was a product of a lack of a proper education and did not appear to have any reading disabilities. I explained my experiences as a first grade teacher, but they stood by their belief. They told us to enroll him in the public school and said their lawyers had advised them not to help homeschooled students unless they agreed to be enrolled in school. We decided we were going to do whatever was necessary to get Anderson a proper evaluation and diagnosis because a mama always listens to her intuition. We paid $3,000 out of pocket to have him diagnosed at Boston Children's Hospital. We saved for over a year to afford that appointment. Family helped us pay for the deposit. Boston Children's, who they're one of the nation's top diagnosticians, diagnosed our son with one of the worst cases of dyslexia they had ever seen. Remember, a year prior, a public school district said there was nothing wrong with him. So please explain to me why an institution that so grievously missed the mark becomes a requirement for any child to receive EFA funds. We found Anderson a tutor that met his exact needs. He spent 4 years with her at a cost to us of $4,000 a year. We sacrificed to make that happen. We never challenged the school district to reimburse us. Today, Anderson is almost 16 years old, and he is thriving in every single subject. He could probably even deliver a well-thought-out commentary on the voting records of every legislator that sponsored this bill. This kid is going places. He works harder than any kiddo I know, and he got through this without being pulled out of class daily, but with directed, personalized, caring help, and with his self-esteem intact and healthy. Had EFA been there, helping us help him, he wouldn't have had to wait until his parents could have afforded the testing and tutoring. My other children would not have had to share materials, go without educational experiences, or use books that were falling apart because that's what we could afford to find at used curriculum sales. They would not have had to take shifts on one computer because affording their brothers tutoring had to be our top priority. But do not think because of this, my children are behind. They each have scored in the 90th percentile of every section of their standardized testing. I have yet to see a public school produce those kind of results. Homeschooling works. But what about the student who doesn't have the support and family that we were blessed with? This bill says that Anderson should have gone to the Gilmington Elementary School for 1 year, even though the public school completely misunderstood his educational needs. This bill says that he should have endured a year of upheaval coming in and out of a classroom. It says he should have been taken away from his friends that he loved at a co-op he adored for a whole year, all because his parents didn't make enough money. This bill causes parents, this bill marginalizes every single child receiving EFA funds. It tells them they deserve less than their students, their friends that are at private schools, martial arts classes, skiing, or dance whose parents can't afford it. This bill says that lower income means untrustworthy as to educational choices. That lower income requires state observation for a year. It's classist. In the last 3 weeks, 15 bills have been written that target EFA, sponsored by almost all Democrats who depend on NEA Union as one of their top donors. I encourage and remind you, you represent us, not the NEA, not a teachers union. You have a sworn oath to represent us, the parents and children of this state. Please do that. Please tell our children they are worth it, that they are cherished by their parents, teachers, and by the people who speak for them in the New Hampshire government, and that you support educational choices. Please vote Senate Bill 141 inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I have a copy for each of you if you'd like.
Okay.
Sorry,
Any
go ahead.
questions from the members of the committee? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. The next one is Wendy Santiago. You try to keep it down to 3 minutes so we get through.
Do my best. Okay, so my name is Wendy Santiago. I am a mother of a 8th grader who is currently in a private school, although that's not how it all started. My son attended Head Start. By the time he was 2.5, he surpassed the preschool program, which you usually don't enter till you're 3 years old. I brought these attention to my pediatrician, in which he stated in writing, Dartmouth Pediatrics, that my child, after great evaluation, had stated that my child was very much above the curve, and said in his letter that he should never enter a public school, as he would find that he would become extremely bored and just maybe have different behavior issues because he's just bored in school. I took that and I did homeschool him because I couldn't afford a private school situation, or others suggested that he had suggested. So I chose to homeschool him. Again, I too, as many others, had to get books that were like maybe used books that weren't like the best curriculum, because that's what I could afford. I did a lot of things that I just knew how to teach, and things that maybe you could just get books that, like I said, that weren't like really full to his potential, but I had to make it work. There was at a point where he was in 3rd grade where I did put him in a public school for the very aspect, as many others, just for the social skill pieces of that and whatnot. I did place him in a public school. In this public school, I received a call to come to the office within approximately about 6 weeks, saying that they were having significant issues with my child. And when I came in for the meeting, I asked them what their problem was, and they handed me a folder about yay thick. And I said, and what is that? And he's like, well, that's all the work your son just did in the last 2 weeks, and we don't know what to do with him. And I said, well, when are you going to place him in a higher grade, like his letter says? And they said that they would not do that. Instead, they were going to keep him where he's at. Therefore, I had to seek a different school, in which I did. At this point, it was a charter school. And this school placed him in the 5th grade classroom because that was where his educational level was. He was still in 3rd grade. In this school, he was bullied. He was picked on. He was harassed. He was threatened that students would bring guns in from their home to show my son how it worked. He came home fearful. He asked me, Mom, do you mind if I run to the hospital? Because it was right down the hill from the charter school. Because I think I'll be safe, but I need to go to a safe place if he chooses to bring the gun to school. The teachers aren't doing anything. And I spoke to the principal. Nothing was done. After getting diagnosed with significant bursitis to his knees after being repetitively thrown to the ground by the same child, I ended up pulling him again from that school, and again we homeschooled. At this point, I had not had any children's scholarship or EFA money. I didn't really know anything about it, but this is where I started seeking things out. And when we were able to get the scholarship, we were able to get him into a private school that was a little higher, which this private school just earned the silver and the bronze for their education. He's flourished well. His state testing places him anywhere in 10th grade to 13 plus. Most of it is in 13 plus. I just don't think it's socially acceptable to put my child in college right now. Although I've looked at college courses for him if I were to sit in the classroom with him. So it's difficult. Some of the reasons that even if my son had not been highly intelligent, which New Hampshire does not have an accelerated program according to Millbrook School. They do not have an accelerated program for my son. which I did ask them about that in order to use that as one of our school choice, but they didn't have a program for him. Some of the other choices that happen for us to choose alternative schooling is also in that charter school that we were at. They chose to teach my son what abortion was. They chose to teach my son what sexual activity was. They chose to teach my son that you doing an alternative lifestyle was the best choice to have. It was very difficult when my son came home and asked me, what is an abortion? I was not prepared to tell my third grader what an abortion was. So I had to explain it the best I could. And I just told him that, that some people make choices that are not right. And I didn't really go into detail.
Thank you. So you support the,
I'm
you oppose this
against,
particular
I'm
bill?
against this
Okay,
bill.
Okay. Any questions from the members?
So,
No questions. Thank you very much.
yes.
Let's see. Janelle Hieronymus. Is that a Janelle? Janelle?
Good morning. My name is Janelle Hieronymus, and I'm a resident of Bedford, and I'm speaking against this bill. I have a postgraduate degree in elementary education from Franklin Pierce University. I'm formerly a New Hampshire State Certified Teacher, grades K through 8, and I've worked in the Merrimack and Bow school districts. I have 7 children, ages 1 to 16, and we have always homeschooled them. My family is using the EFA program for the first time this school year. Due to our religious beliefs and our family values, using the public school system is not an option for us. Quite simply, we will never put our children into public school. Raising a large family on a single income is a challenge, and we've struggled in the past with how to provide a robust and excellent education for them. I'd like to briefly show you how the EFA program has helped us to do that this year. Homeschooling my teenage son was not going well. He had reached an age where he didn't enjoy being at home with his mom and his younger siblings all day. He was depressed and unenthused about his learning. Because of the EFA, we were able to enroll him this year in a small private school that supports our faith. He's thriving there. He's gained so much by being in class with other students and by being challenged by his teachers. He's happy again, and our relationship has improved. My daughter, also in high school, has been able to take live online classes with amazing college-level instructors through a program called Homeschool Connections. These classes are about $400 per class per semester, something that we could not afford before the EFA. My other daughter is hoping to join her brother at the private school next year, but she's behind in her math skills. Using EFA funds, we've been able to pay for private tutoring to catch her up. Another son has some unique learning challenges, and it's always tricky to find the curriculum that's going to click for him. Before the EFA, I simply didn't have the funds to switch gears if something wasn't working out. However, using the EFA, I've had the freedom to explore different programs and find things that really work for him. My youngest son in the program benefits from the EFA by being able to take an art class. It sounds simple, but it's something we never had the extra money for, and he would not have been exposed to because of that. New Hampshire parents have the right to choose how we educate our children, and not all of us will choose the public schools. For those that don't, the EFA allows us to provide the very best education for our children. If this bill were to take the EFA away from my kids because they've never been in public school and because we aren't willing to put them there, then they are the ones that lose out. I urge you not to let that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from the members? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So Samantha Van Ness is next.
Is it okay if she sits on my lap? Yeah, thank you. Hello.
Address
Senators.
the issues of the bill.
I'm sorry.
I said address the bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, let me pull up my notes here. So good morning. My name is Samantha Van Ness, and I'm a mother of 2 children, Kale, 7, and Maeve, 5, who have traveled here from Dorchester, New Hampshire, to be here with me today. They are both currently enrolled in the EFA program, to which I am opposing the Bill 141. To be frank, I'll start by saying I'm about as left as they come. And I'm here for different reasons than many that are here to voice their experiences and thoughts. Similarly to those, however, there are threads that connect us all, and I'm here today for the same reason that I was there to pull my son out of his first year of school in the fall of 2021. I'm here because I will always be there and always step up for the best interests of my children, and the absurdity and ignorance and classism that lies in the assumption that low-income families do not have the foresight to make proper choices for their children from the outset of their educational journey is astounding to me. My family switched to home educating mere months after enrolling our child in the public school system. We had our reservations prior to enrollment, but saw things through the way society deemed right, against our better judgment and against the knowledge of our own situation, and ultimately against our child's best interest in that case. Because that's the thing, right? It's easier to do what's expected, what's typical, than go against the grain. And I hope I don't make that mistake again. Yet HB 141, if passed, seeks to create another barrier to make the right choice for our child due to our attempt to partake in our public education system in the first place. I know my children better than most people ever will, and certainly better than those proposing this bill. I know my family's situation better too. And it's shameful to think that someone would penalize families like us and strip our child's opportunities simply due to the targeting of those who were unwavering in their devotion to providing their children with the best educational experience they could offer. Should you choose to see this bill through, you'd be forcing us and families like us to make a choice between subjecting our children to more of the failings of the public school system, to send our son back to bullying, to the suppression of his authentic self, for social acceptance amongst irrelevant humans in his life, to dismantling the world where which he has come to thrive academically, physically, and where he is able to develop all facets of himself in environments that offer naught but support from the people who genuinely and deeply care for him. You ask me to tear him away from the peers in our homeschooling community that have helped build him back up. You ask me to send him back to a school for an arbitrary period of time to relearn concept he's been years ahead of from the start. My choice is to do that for these funds that are supposed to be there to help them, to help our family to do exactly what we are doing. The choice you seek to present us with is not a choice at all. Without the EFA grant, we will still be a low-income homeschooling family. The only difference is that you'll be stifling their access to many of the programs, classes, special education services, technologies, enrichments, and other opportunities afforded to other children on our tax-paying dime who are making do with the subpar public school systems while we continue to tailor our children's learning to their needs and interests from a disadvantaged position. The senators who made the rules, you were the ones who ultimately controlled our entry to this program, and now we're moving the goalpost. These funds are highly regulated and difficult to use as a homeschooling family, as a family who still can't afford to put the grant towards private education. These funds are doing precisely what they were intended to do for homeschoolers in our income bracket. Perhaps they are doing less than they could be without all the red tape. That said, the benefits that this program has the potential to bring, yes, even to those families who were not participating in the public school system to begin with, is immeasurable. Is it really all that wrong that a family that has been scraping by in their homeschooling journey for however many years can now partake in an educational summer program or have access to tutoring or other learning center offerings that they would not otherwise? I've barely scratched the surface on the issues that have solidified our decision to homeschool our children, be it the hour-long commute to our school district starting in kindergarten, when there's a different elementary school 15 minutes away, or perhaps that my son was tackling multiplication and division for fun the summer prior to attending school, yet was being asked to do single-digit additions for months while in class, even after repeatedly reaching out for assistance from the teachers. Or perhaps it was the look of defeat I would see in my first grader's eyes at pickup after he was bullied mercilessly for wearing a dress. I'm here today to ask that you consider all demographics in your thought explorations regarding this program, not just the ones that appear to be villainous to you. I can't imagine a program of this sort without flaws. There are several regarding the EFA that I regularly take issue with, though they are off topic for today's discussion. For now, I will continue to show up for my children. I will continue seeing them for who they are, meeting them where they're at, and supporting them in their growth as a whole person. I will continue providing them with every opportunity I possibly can, and I will continue to choose that which is in their best interest. Ultimately, I will continue to choose to see the shades of gray and have come to hope that you see them as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you. Mallory?
Good morning, committee members. My name is Mallory LeDuc, and I'm a resident of Hampton. I'm a mother of young children who aren't yet school age, and I arranged childcare for them this morning so that I could speak on behalf of my beloved family members and my friends who have changed their children's lives for the better, thanks to the EFA, as well as speak on behalf of my children's future. You've heard wonderful testimonies this morning from people whom you represent about why these funds have made a way for them to pursue excellence for their family. You've seen the true impact that results from giving children of this wonderful state options for their education that go far beyond homeschooling. You've been confronted with mothers, fathers, and educators who are motivated by the unflinching desire to set their children up to be assets to this state of New Hampshire and productive, contributing members of society. Have you considered the motivations behind the sponsorship of this bill? Does forcing children back into a school system that doesn't work for them have anything to do with a desire to meet their needs? Absolutely not. Telling families who are finding success with their education choices they don't have enough money to deserve to make the choice marginalizes and cripples the very people you are supposed to be advocating for. Instead, the Democratic legislators who sponsored this bill will artificially boost public school attendance, create wider gaps in student-to-teacher ratio, and in the end, set thousands of kids up for failure. No, this bill is not about the children. If the education freedom accounts come with the bondage of a requirement for government school attendance, it becomes the very opposite of its intent. I ask you to stand behind the future leaders of this state by voting for their educational freedom. I ask you to stand up to the NEA-sponsored Democrats who have put forth a classist bill that will marginalize children and families who hold no less potential for greatness than those who do not need the EFA funding. Please vote Senate Bill 141 inexpedient to legislate. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Questions from the members? None. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
There's a copy for each.
Thank you. Trina Brooker? Trina? Oh, okay, sure.
Start? Am I supposed to
Yes.
start? Okay,
Just-
good morning.
Just keep to the bill and make it
Yes.
as short as you possibly
I've
can.
got it short.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Trina Brucker, and I am a homeowner and taxpayer in Londonderry. I am the mother of 4 children in the EFA program. Thank you for allowing me the time to share with you today. I'm speaking in opposition to Senate Bill 141. Today, I'd like to ask you to ponder the question, who, not what, should education be focused on? Of course, the answer is children. They are our future of this great state and our nation. Who knows these children best? Of course, it's their parents. Who are their biggest advocates? Once again, their parents. The EFA opened up options for my children that were not possible otherwise. My children are thriving in their current school. I ask that you oppose SB 141 because my children and many others like them would suffer greatly to be removed from their school. Simply to meet a requirement of attending public school for 1 year before being eligible for state funds. Are we pushing children into a mold, or are we understanding that they're unique and have different gifts and abilities, and therefore may not thrive in the same environment as others? Are we truly considering taking children who are exceeding in their current environment and pushing them into a model that might be great for some, but is definitely not one size fits all. And for what? To be able to check a box to say that they went to public school for a year? Let's please go back to who this is for. The children. No one but the children. Please consider the ripple effects in those children's lives that this bill would affect. And then I ask you, if it's really about the children, is that best for them? I can answer that as their mother, but you can also answer that with your opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from the members? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Randall Kelly. Randall Kelly. Thank you. Mhm. There's 3 of them.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please state your name and address the bill. And try to make it as short and succinct as you possibly can.
Absolutely. My name is Randall Kelly. I'm from Bristol. These are my guardian daughters, actually. And I don't know in my short period of time whether I can express the gratitude I have for this bill, for how I've seen these ladies excel. They've went from average students to high honors, and she just got on the grading system and she's already honors. So, and that young lady our youngest had a very bad, she still does, has a very bad learning disability that the public schools had completely ignored. When they came under our guardianship, she couldn't read or write. That's despicable. And now they have a vocabulary now that would probably embarrass some adults. And I'm not saying the school system contributed wholeheartedly to that, because we enforce that in the home also. I just can't express once again how beneficial this has been to these young ladies, and how derogatory I saw their educational course heading when they were under the roof of the public school system. Once again, I'm going to speak on the youngest. She has very bad ADD, and they have a program at the school they attend called Timber Nook, which they can go out, and some days she comes home, and I don't even want to let her in the car. She's so dirty, okay? But she can be a child. They let them do whatever they want within, as long as they're not killing each other, obviously, but they let them be kids. And I found that it's helped her, once she gets back into the classroom, she can study, she can be more aligned on what she needs to do. ADD and ADHD are a plague that I think we don't question enough on why it's happened and where we're going with it across America to address it. I was not very aware of it. I found that I am plagued with it, unfortunately. Now that I've been educated with her, I see I have a lot of the same symptoms, and I see a lot of people don't even know. It's a plague across America that I see that these private schools are helping more than the public schools could even think about addressing. I don't know what else to say, besides I personally have seen the results from these young ladies, and I've seen how they are going to be productive members of society where maybe they would have been sponges to some degree. I know my influence.
You're opposing this bill.
Excuse me, ma'am?
You are opposing the bill.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Okay.
I think that it'll take away from the benefit that these children now receive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a comment. Keep
Senator
up the good work.
Sandro.
Thank you.
Lyra Ann Brown. Quite a few.
My name is Lyra Brown. I live Manchester, New Hampshire, and I am in opposition of this bill. My mother uses this kind of money to bring us to science museums and things that use educational fundings. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions for Lyra? Seeing none, thank you very much. Let's see. Deanne Planchette.
Good morning. My name is Deanne Planchet. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts regarding the EFA scholarship program. I stand before you sit before you today as a tax-paying citizen of Loudon, New Hampshire. I am a homeschool mom of 9 children, and I'm a grateful recipient of the EFA scholarship. 21 years ago, I chose to invest in the education of my children through homeschooling. I did so for the love of my children, for the love of learning, and the joy in watching my children master a new concept or pursue a passion or a dream. My husband and I incurred the expense of our homeschool curriculum. We devoted our time, our effort, and our energy in helping our kids succeed in their education, while at the same time supporting, through our tax dollars, the local school district. We did this gratefully. All of our children are unique individuals. They have unique talents, abilities, challenges, and strengths. Homeschooling allowed us to tailor each child's education to their natural aptitudes. Through hard work, dedication, and persistence, we are thus far blessed with one magna cum laude graduate of Norwich University, one honor student attending Southern New Hampshire University, one honor student attending the University of New Hampshire at Durham, another honor student attending the New Hampshire Technical Institute, and one of our sons chose to go pursue a career in the trades and is pursuing his master's electrician's license. We have 4 remaining undergraduate students, and we continue to support our local school district through our taxes. In 2021, our 10th grade daughter and our 8th grade son expressed an interest in attending what they labeled real school. We chose to pursue attendance at a local private school, offering them smaller class size to help them adjust to their new educational experience, as well as a place that supports our Judeo-Christian values in their education and their philosophy. Because of the EFA scholarship, we were able to afford to send our children to this school. The scholarship paid for only part of the tuition, but that part enabled us to afford it. The children are thriving at their new school. Through hard work and dedication, they are achieving great grades, taking advantage of extracurricular activities like sports and literary competitions. We also have one daughter who remains in my homeschool care. She has particular cognitive and emotional challenges that have been best suited in our one-on-one tutorship through homeschooling. Because of the EFA scholarship, I was able to procure curriculum that has benefited her unique learning style, curriculum that I would not have afforded otherwise. The scholarship has paid for reading materials, science experiments, and computer programs to help her achieve her educational goals. We have been blessed by the support we receive from EFA, and still we support our local school district through our tax dollars. 19 of the 21 years of homeschooling, my husband and I bore solely the burden of our children's education. We've happily supported our local school district through our tax dollars. while saving the school district a lot of money by homeschooling. The EFA scholarship program is extremely valuable to families who wish to invest in the education of their children and their unique learning abilities. I urge you all to value all New Hampshire families and make no new rules to limit the participation in the EFA scholarship, and please oppose this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thanks. Representative Potenza?
Hi, my name's Representative Kelly Potenza. I'm from Stratford District 19. I'm actually on my way to committee, so I wasn't planning on speaking, but I have to. I strongly oppose this bill for a lot of different reasons. We're utilizing this at this point. So in all actuality, we would be kicked out of the program. My family would. My two daughters are very blessed to go to Jesse Remington High School. It's quite an expensive school. It's one of the best Christian schools in the state. But in addition to that, this is just so unfair, and it's actually probably one of the most heartless bills that you can ever imagine. So if you just look at the numbers, so the kids that came from public school were 1,260. The kids that are in the program right now are 3,025. So minus 3,025 by 1,260. And that's how many kids you're going to kick out. And you're going to tell them that they have to go back to public school to be able to be eligible for this. This is just, it's sad, it's heartless, it's not equality. These people are paying money, they're paying just like we all do, our tax dollars. And this is education freedom. This is what parents want for their children. They know what's best for their children. There's another bill that's coming up, which basically takes away income limits and has, for children that have anything from special needs to different learning styles and all of that, to take away income limits. And that's something that, of course, I completely support. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. It never has been. And the schools right now are millions of dollars they have right now in surplus. And we're doing this. I'm sad, I'm disappointed, and I know that the Senate will do the right thing with this, and I'm all about ITL. So thank you for your time, and you can ask me any questions if you want, but
You're on your way to committee here.
I'm on my way to committee. So thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Jody Gonzalez? Gonzalez?
Consolas.
Hi,
Hi,
Jody.
thank you. I'm opposed to the bill. I'm a little baffled in why it would even take place when you're forcing children to do something that never worked for them. My son's an example of that, and I'm going to tell you the story really quick. I have it written down. My son is an accelerated learner. By law, the public school system doesn't have to address that, and they didn't for my child. So in kindergarten, my son was very bored and uneducated to his abilities. Toward the end of kindergarten, he was hit by a car, leaving him with a brain injury with many physical, emotional, and functional issues. His public school system planned for him was a 504, which was seldom followed. My child was later denied an IEP per his neurological evaluation. I advocated for my son throughout his entire first grade with no success. Needless to say, I never returned him at the end of first grade to that abusive system. The funding has allowed me to customize his education based on his abilities and his disabilities by utilizing tutors inside our home and outside of our home. A co-op he went to, and I have to say that co-op came up with a plan that fit my son's needs in no time. I can get him the educational materials he needs and the supplies. My son also has the time to rest when needed and to make his doctor's appointments on time without interfering in his education. My son's progressing in his education. He's an A student plus. And he goes to a school called Prenda, which is a micro school. It's of 10 kids, which is perfect for a child with his abilities and disabilities. His school marks are so high there, but he's also getting educated at home outside of there because those are his abilities. Why would you all want to take that away from my son and put him back to the same school system that failed him? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very
Okay.
much for your
Thank
testimony.
you very much, and I oppose this bill wholeheartedly. Thank you.
So you have a Bonnie, Rib, or Ruff?
Bonnie Neff.
Huh?
Neff.
This thing here? NEFF?
Yes.
Neff?
Yes. Good morning. My name is Bonnie Neff, and I am a resident and registered voter from the town of Alton. I am here to testify how homeschooling my children for 15 years has allowed them to succeed in their passive education in numerous ways and give back to the community. I am opposing Senate Bill 141. Our oldest, who was involved in a horse accident, suffered with post-concussive syndrome while in high school and had to do therapy for a year. Because of her doctor's appointments and her therapy schedule, homeschooling allowed her not to miss a beat. She is now one class away from graduating with a major in chemistry and minor in mathematics from Plymouth State University with honors, and desires to use her expertise in cancer research to care for her community. Let me note that she has been one of the most sought-after tutors at Plymouth State University, and just yesterday was asked by her professor what homeschooling looked like for her. She explained, and then the professor told her that they're seeing more homeschoolers at the university, and they're being observed as more academically advanced and serious about their education there at the college than the general public school students. Our second child struggled with slight dyslexia, and I was able to educate him and attend to his needs so that he graduated high school and is now giving back to his community by working as a full-time electrical apprentice and going to school nights to achieve his master's electrical license. One of his homeschooling highlights was being part of a theater guild, and his acting talents gave him a paid acting position at a period of time. Our third is a sophomore in high school and is starting his college career in the fall at NHTI in their Cisco Academy program, and would like to either have or most of his associate's degree finished by the time he graduates high school. We are not starting at NHTI first, but after our research at our local public school, we realized that he was more mature and had a direction of where he wanted to go. Homeschooling has allowed him to open his own business, in which he sells his workmanship to local country stores in the Lakes region. Homeschooling also allowed him to school while he was recovering last year from a major ski accident, which left him with a damaged kidney. Our fourth has the mind of an engineer. He builds the most amazing Lego creations and has entered them into competitions in which he has received ribbons. He is an amazing reader and displays advanced higher level reasoning for his age. Then we have our surprise number 5. And currently, she's very good at math and says she wants to work in a field that uses math just like her daddy. All 5 of our children have taken the standardized tests every year and have passed their grade level in many subjects. Homeschooling has allowed my husband and I to focus on our children's talents and gifts and to give back to their community in the sciences, the electrical field, information technology field, and possible engineering and finance field. My family is here to support homeschooling in any way possible, and from firsthand experience and those that we know, the EFA scholarship has already helped and allowed them to further their education, to be prepared to go into the work field with no need to attend any public school for 1 year. By forcing homeschoolers to attend a public school for a year shows that the legislation now has an agenda and is forcing us to public education, which creates a monopoly. This forces us to use your service and not allow parents to choose their course of education. You are a representative of the people, and you are hearing from the people. I want to thank you all for your time and for granting me this time to speak on behalf of the homeschooling community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Seth Evangelo?
Hi, my name is Seth Evangelo, and I am here to express extreme opposition to this bill, specifically with reference to the requirement to attend public school for a year first. I've been listening out there. I fully endorse everything that's been said before, and there are so many stories. And I just want to say that I'm probably the same as everyone out there. We're all here representing 10 to 20 other families at least who couldn't be here, 50 or more children in each, combined in those families. I know personally a good 20 families who are benefiting greatly from this. It's brand new ultimately, and we're just beginning to see how transformative this is for our children. This isn't all homeschoolers. I know a number of kids who are the families are using it for private school as well. We personally I have 5 kids. We homeschool. I'm not going to tell you stories about every single child, but in 2 years we've been in it. This is our 2nd year, so a year and a half. Completely transformed our entire experience of homeschool. Our kids are excelling in many different areas. One of the just obvious ones is we're in music lessons now, and it's amazing to see them. The oldest 3 are playing music now, and they have a very good teacher. There's no way we would be able to do this. I want to add, I think it's important. My wife and I, we feel called to homeschool. We love it. And it's a lifestyle that we're drawn to. We love teaching. We love the family environment, the culture that it gives us. But we don't recruit to homeschooling. We would never try and convince somebody to leave the school system in order to homeschool, because it's hard. It's a very difficult thing. So I don't want this to be like a school versus homeschool. It's easy to categorize people that way. That's not where we come from. We're not anti-school. We just love homeschooling, and there's freedoms to it. We don't have any family in New Hampshire, so we travel and we try and find time to get our children to see their grandparents a lot, and not being in school has given us an incredible ability. We'll be in another state doing school with our children, and it allows them to see family. We don't have a lot of money, so it's not like we're world travelers, but it's just to go to see family. So I think I'm just going to end there. I'm just going to say once again, we all here represent just, there's somebody said earlier, there's over 2,000 kids that didn't come from the public school system. They would be kicked out of this with this bill. And it's only going to grow because it's so helpful. It is so transformative. We're so grateful for the opportunities that this has given our children. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you. Deborah House. Morning.
Good morning, Senator Ward, Senator Prentice. Faces that I recall from last session, and Senator Lang, Gendro, and Fenton are new to me this year. I'm Deborah House from American Federation of Teachers, New Hampshire, and I am here in support of this bill. We represent 4,000 members in kindergarten, actually pre-K through 12 education, university, faculty, and public services across New Hampshire. And I am here to talk about the 160,000 students and their families in public schools. We have heard many impassioned stories about how this has helped families, and I think that's marvelous. But we do need to remember that New Hampshire has a constitutional obligation to fund a public education, and it has not done a great job of that, as we have seen through numerous court findings. We're still trying to sort that out. There are numerous pieces of legislation working through this session to try and do a better job of that for all of those families who rely on public schools. This bill would be one step in trying to bring a wildly over budget program that was hurriedly passed through the means of the budget 2 years ago into some control. When this program was brought up 2 years ago, it was described as giving families educational choice. Families have educational choice. But this puts the taxpayer on the hook for all sorts of families who meet the income guideline. As we have seen, most of the families who are using this program were already exercising their choice to educate their children how they feel is the best fit for them. So we have put the taxpayer on the hook for many additional families that we were not paying for before, and we are in danger of straining our education trust fund. There's only so much money in that trust fund, and if we blow a hole in it, it will empty that much faster, and we will be having an even harder time meeting our constitutional obligation to those 160,000 students who rely on public schools. So the accountability that is suggested in this bill is one step in the right direction. We would really like to see some additional measures of accountability, such as stronger independent auditing of expenses that have no connection to the scholarship fund that also gets a portion of each EFA. Having someone who gets money from each voucher be the one who also oversees whether the money is spent well just is not good practice. And we would also like to see written into statute that there can't be any discrimination by any school or education service provider that is taking an EFA. We know this bill doesn't do that, but if you're thinking of ways to improve it and make it stronger, we would love to see that. I have written testimony, and I will pass that around, and that's where I'll end, unless you've got questions. Okay.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the Senator Lang?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple questions for you. Given the interpretation of this bill that with the new 1 year requirement of public education and people that have never had that, do you think that having a child having to leave the current education setting there and might be a private school setting or a homeschool setting and then go to public school for a year, then have to go back, if they choose to, back to homeschooling or private education would be disruptive to the child's educational progress?
That's an interesting question, and it's something I would have to think about as opposed to an absolute. Is this something that we could maybe look at language that would possibly, cap what is the children currently in the program, but going forward? So I would reserve an absolute answer on that, but it might be something that would be open to discussion for a better way to handle it, to not disrupt students who are currently in the program, but maybe going forward as a means of not allowing this to balloon further. Because remember, this program was supposed to cost $129,000 the first year, and it cost $8 million. So that's a big hole.
Follow up?
Yeah.
Follow up.
Thank you. You worked right into my second question.
Yeah.
My question was, were you aware that even given the over budget nature of the EFA program, the Education Trust Fund is still $107 million in surplus funds, even paying for the overage of the EFA program, that there's still money available for education beyond that?
At the moment, because we've been getting a fair amount of money coming from federal support, but that money is shutting off. So, it's not a bottomless supply. And knowing that we have schools where the answer to lead testing is to shut down the water fountains because you can't replace them. We have schools where you choose your reading material by which books aren't falling apart. You have schools where students are sharing computers. I heard about, families were talking about sharing computers. Well, we have public school students who have to wait for their turn to use computers. These are facts of life. We have many schools that are under-resourced, not all of them, but many of them. So that trust fund is not going far enough or providing enough support in the places that need it the most.
And one follow-up question, Madam Chair. Sure, yes, thank you. So my other question is, considering the limitations of this program as it relates to the people who are who can take advantage of it, the hardship, the 300% of poverty, and the fact that a family of four, given the inflationary and housing rates, do you not think that providing support to those families to free up their own personal resources they might have used to pay for food and housing, or do you think that they should not get that and they should be forced in order to free up that money to go to public school? And we're talking about $4,900 that they get maximum, and it's used to offset whatever minor costs they might have in the education of their child, which then frees up cash for them to buy food and buy housing and to,
Well, if we were willing to consider, strict accountability on many issues, maybe we could talk about that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Marcy? Marcy? The Tilly?
Marcy?
I want to say Petit. Tilly? Marcy Tilly? Has to leave, okay. Vilenki Rios?
I hope everybody's having a great day today. I am here to support the EFA and the Children's Scholarship Fund. I am a mother. Did I say my name was Valenki Rios? My name is Valenki Rios, and I have 4 children, and I've been homeschooling for about 9 years. I have a 20-year-old daughter who is in college and received a full scholarship to Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma. I still pay for her rooming board. So when I started homeschooling, because she wasn't being provided what she needed, I made this just in blind faith, took her out and tried to support her in what she needed. And because she was too smart and she was being streamlined with the public school system, I was able to find materials. And at the time, my husband and I were in the lower income bracket. So just like he just asked the lady that was here before me, he had said about food and stuff. We didn't qualify for food stamps or anything like that. So we were coming out of pocket. And it was really hard for us to be able to educate her in the way that she needed, that was good for her learning style. And she made it. And then as I just continue to see my other children they have been in the public school system. So I'm not speaking from a place where I've never dealt with the public school system. I started to see that my 3rd grader was falling under. And again, I started to make a conscious decision. She needed something more. So I pulled her out and I did it one by one. And I put her in a virtual learning academy that I was coming out of pocket, a few grand. Again, in that lower income level of where we were at the time. But I felt that it was important. So I gave up my job and my husband took an extra initiative so that we could get more income to be able to support our children educationally. So my last 2, right around the pandemic time, they were definitely being hurt by what was going on and being in these virtual classrooms. I have another child who is gifted and he is like amazing. The public school system had nothing to provide for him to be able to be supported in the way that he was accelerating in his learning. And so because they had nothing in the state of New Hampshire, that would be able to support him academically, I had to make a conscious decision. Every piece of work that his teacher had given us during the pandemic to keep him busy, she gave me 5 days of work. He was done in 5 minutes. It wasn't challenging enough. So when I was able to finally say, I'm just going to pull them out and I'm going to do this, now he's able to do projects and engineering and things that would help him. So this has given us that cushion to be able to support them academically and support them even in the arts. So they're able to go to music theater and embrace that part of life that would help them to grow and be more well-rounded. And so I'm here to support because I know that this does help a lot of families like mine and others. So thank you for considering. Yes. I don't think you need to go to public school to
That's another question. But I mean, right now, this bill proposes that we make some significant changes or reduce the availability of EFAs. That's not what you want.
No.
You are opposing this bill.
I am
Okay,
opposing
you said
it.
supports. I want to be sure that I know.
Oh,
what
yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
supporting.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a blessed day.
Honorable Packy Campbell.
Senate Committee of Education, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Packy Campbell, and I had the privilege of serving on House Education for a number of years when I was a state rep here. I have a little bit of a hobby when it comes to education funding, and I've watched bills of this nature for 2+ decades progress through the House. And what I would say to you is that when you see these issues, the pendulum swings a little bit in each direction, and I think that's the way it should be. And right now, the way 141 is proposed, this pendulum swims back in a direction that's just too massive of a change to undertake at one time. I was happy to see the sponsors and especially members of the unions talk a little bit about maybe there's some compromise, maybe there's something they could look at, maybe there's some changes that both parties would be willing to make. So I'll speak specifically to some of the things on the bill. You know, the first thing that changes is the income eligibility. You haven't heard a lot of testimony on that. I also this past year founded a school and founded a nonprofit when the Catholic school in my town was closed. It was closed because it's been fiscally discriminated against for decades. This bill is the first time when you see education freedom accounts that you have a little bit more fiscal equality for private schools, religious schools, homeschoolers. So if you have to income test every single year, you would be encouraging people not to do better. You would be encouraging people not to improve their income. Sometimes people have temporary income gains, like a big plow season and you're a plow truck guy, you make a little bit more money. That just makes no sense. And that was already removed from this bill. It was purposely not put in, and it was a fight to get that condition out. We know what that condition was. It was there previously. I'll skip over 14 because it's moot if you get rid of 19 and 20. To be clear, 19 and 20, to answer your question, coming from the background of House Education, yes, that would exclude all homeschoolers. Yes, it would exclude all people in public school. It would exclude everyone who wasn't in either a charter school or a public school. That's the intent of the bill, and I think it's very clear, and that would be horrific. So what I would like to propose is that, you know, in my 1 minute here, is there a compromise? And I don't say that lightly. You have an education funding bill that's based on the adequate education grant. No one's talked about that. This is the adequacy money. The state has an obligation to pay for the adequate education of all students in New Hampshire, not just students in public schools. Specifically, the EFA program has a statute that says public monies from the Education Trust Fund can go to EFAs. And that is tied to the adequate education grant, which is tied to the constitutional requirement to provide for an adequate education at the state level. We've defined that, we've done that. Understand that your adequate education grant to a municipality is based on in residence, but your adequate education grant that you get in the public school through the municipality is based on attendance. That's the way it works. So when you attend a homeschool or you attend a private school or you attend an online class and you're deemed by the Department of Education to be receiving an adequate education, by enrollment in the program, you're receiving an adequate education because you're receiving adequate education funds. So how do we income test one group that's receiving an adequate education, but we don't income test the other group? The sponsor mentioned secondary education and college level courses. Those monies and those funds, although income tests, they're open to both public and private schools. They don't discriminate against it. Yet we discriminate against religious schools fiscally by saying you're only going to get this little bit of money if you make less than 300% of the poverty level. So the grand compromise that I would propose would be that you get rid of the income limit and then you give the unions what they're after, more money. As we should. I don't sit here as a guy who founded a Catholic school, as a father of 5, as a former state rep, and have an axe to grind with public education or government-run schools. I want to support them. I passed education funding 20 years ago when I was on the subcommittee for House Education, made a deal with the Senate, and that basic funding formula of targeting aid to poor communities is what we use today. We made a compromise, and it was a good compromise to target money based on average daily membership and residence, based on your equalized assessed value, that is still by far the largest factor in targeting aid to poor communities. I want to support, I'm from Farmington, we're number 8. We're a poor community. I would like to get more money for my school. I did that when I was a state rep to the tune of over $2 million in 1 year. And it's continued for the last 20 years. I don't know that money solves everything, but I think it helps. I think it's a fair statement to make that if we could make the public schools have the money that they need. So what I would propose is that I leave this with the committee. Basically does 3 things. You have in this bill for every ESA student what they call a transition grant. I would propose that you would make that payable to the student's resident district, that you'd make it permanent, that you'd make it a fixed amount. We haven't had the political capital. I mean, politically, this bill has 10 Democratic senators, every Democratic senator now. You don't get a much more political bill than this. And I don't say that to be negative. I just mean this is the bill to make a grand compromise. If you're going to be able to really move this issue in a positive direction for all stakeholders, for both parties, for public schools and private schools, for homeschoolers. If you're really going to be able to do that, this is the bill to make a grand compromise. And I'm telling you, based on my political experience, I can get both parties to come together in a grand compromise. Because I think that the unions, if they get more money, are going to be able to make an effort to say, hey, maybe that's a compromise. So I propose that every kid currently in the program would get $2,000 and a permanent grant to their resident district. I propose that they would be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities in their resident district without having to pay for that class. So right now, if you want to go take a science class or an AP class, you might be charged by your resident district, and you'd have to use your EFA money. So what I would say to solve that issue, let's give that resident district $2,000, because I think there has to be a placeholder. There has to be a building. We should support that. And if the kid needs to come back, he can go there part-time, participate in the sports programs. And the local school district, most of them don't charge kids when they come back part-time, but some of them do, would get $2,000 per student for every student in the EFA. It would get rid of the income limit, so potentially my daughter, who has a grandchild in a private Catholic school, is ineligible because she makes a little bit more than $65,000. She makes about $75,000. And her and her husband have one child. They're not eligible. But they make $75,000 a year, and they spend 10% of their income to send their child to a private Catholic school. I mean, that's just not fair. And she's entitled to that adequate education constitutionally. So the constitutional question is, can you discriminate against one person similarly situated like another person receiving adequate education? And I think if you take anything from this testimony, take that to the opinion of the justices. Take this bill and ask the justices, can we constitutionally do this? Because one side's saying you can't, the other side's saying you can. Go to the court and ask the question. I'm willing to take that risk. I think I know my Constitution enough that you can't discriminate that way. So I would ask the committee to just take this little outline and think about, is there a grand compromise to be made? And I really appreciate all of your service. I really appreciate all the parents. I know this is a tough issue for everybody. I have a great deal of respect for the senators that did sponsor this bill. Senator Waters is from Dover, he's from Stratford County. These are good people. And I think that we got to put our axes aside and come up with a compromise that will work for government-run education, for the unions, and for both parties, but most importantly, for the parents and the students and the teachers that need educational freedom accounts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Did you take those so we need copies of them? The proposal? Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sarah Scott?
She had to leave, but we'll email her testimony.
Oh, okay. Allison Budafoco?
Alyssa.
Alyssa Marie. So that we
Hello.
have two of you speaking at the same time with the same last name?
Hello, my name is Alyssa. My mother and I are here together today, so I'll be speaking first and then she'll be speaking after me.
Okay. Can you keep it down to 2 minutes?
I will try.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having us today. My name is Alyssa, as I said before, and I'm here to tell you today why I'm against Bill 141 and why you should veto against it and why it is unconstitutional. I'm 16 years old. I have been homeschooled all my life up until this year when I was given the privilege and blessing to go to a small Christian school in Candia with only 50 kids. I have never thrived more in my entire life there, academically, physically, relationally, and emotionally. I want to set up a simple scenario for you and ask you a simple question. From the looks of just meeting me, you might think I'm bold, outspoken, and by the end of the speech, maybe even consider me smart. But as this bill assumes that all kids are cut mold, and that if they were all to go to public school, what you would not know about me is that I actually have dyscalculia and struggle extremely hard in math, that I'm quite shy with friends, and that actually being in a public school setting would not only detrimentally damage me and hurt me, but physically restrain me. I would like to, okay. The EFA allows not only struggling children like me to exceed for some, but to also allow us to fulfill our potential and our dreams and to get ahead in life. Our founding fathers promised us 3 simple things in our Constitution. Declaration of Independence. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By taking away the EFA, you are forcibly removing these fundamental rights. This bill would turn the EFA into something that used to be a blessing to others like me into more of a government handout with strings attached. Why should me, my friends, and many others and children like me be forced to go to public school for 1 year to be eligible for the EFA? As I said before, this would not only be detrimental and damaging to me. Why should I be taken away from an environment where I have been thriving for most of my life and now the first year in school, and I've never been thriving more? At this point, I hate to say it, but this bill is honestly just about control. These parents work hard, these kids like me work hard to stay in our schools because for some of us, this is our only opportunity to get ahead in life from where we were born. I urge you, if you are still on the fence whether you should support or veto this bill, please consider what President Abraham Lincoln said. He said it best. In one of his most famous speeches, he said, "Of the people, by the people, for the people. Not by the government, for the people."
Please veto this bill to protect me and the next future generation of New Hampshire to ensure that we keep our fundamental given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you for your time and service. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maria?
Sorry, that was actually the first time I heard that. So, sorry, she made me emotional.
You mean she wrote that without your input?
She wrote that 100%. She wouldn't even let me, she didn't read it to me before, so
Okay.
it's the first time I'm hearing it. So I'm here opposing the bill, and I should have gone first
No,
instead of second.
Tell us your name.
My name's Maria Batafico, and just a little bit about our family. I'm a single mom. I homeschooled my two children up till this year, where they decided they want to go to college, and I just felt it was a good transition for them to go from homeschooling to a high school. And the EFA afforded us the opportunity to do so. You've heard a lot of people opposing the bill, and so I'm not going to go back through, but basically that's their situation. My daughters are thriving in a small private Christian school, and to remove them would be very disruptive to their education. I pay property taxes just like my neighbors do who send their kids to public school. And I would just ask you and challenge you to focus on repairing what's wrong with the public schools that so many of us are asking for education choice. And the EFA, as you've heard, there's families upon families upon families that are just thriving, and there's just seems like there's so much mismanagement in the public schools with those their budgets, their financially. So I would just ask that you oppose this bill and focus on where the majority is, and that's on the public schools and making them competitive. So we want to put our children in there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee?
Sorry. Did you have a question?
Nope, we don't. Thank you very much. Actually, that concludes the testimony, unless somebody in the audience wants to say something. And keep it down.
Gotcha. Good morning and thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. My name's Brendan Cochran. I live over in Tufton Borough. I homeschool my 6-year-old daughter with the help of my wife, who is a grade school teacher or was a grade school teacher. And I'm here, well, let me give you a little bit of background on me. So I'm a molecular biologist and a scientist. I run many companies, and I run large divisions within pharmaceutical companies. This is a capitalist system. It's free market. And what we're seeing here today, just wide scope, is a system that's failing. And if it were in the private sector, it wouldn't exist. So what exactly are we talking about? I like Senator Lang sort of put the Teachers Association on notice. What happens when we pull a kid out of the home or private school where they are getting good grades and performing well and stick them in a public school system? Now listen, I'm not here to bash teachers. Teachers are wonderful. They are doing a very important service, but they're failing. And if it's a failing business, it goes out of business, it gets re-resourced, and something better comes along, okay? I'm not saying we take that leap tomorrow, but by taking a bunch of kids out of the EFA system, which, by the way, we don't benefit from that system, okay? We don't, okay? But I'm here to support it. And I think the system ought to be expanded, not subtracted. And my question is, who are we supporting? Are we supporting the residents of New Hampshire? Which, by the way, if you go out to that lobby, I don't see anybody, New Hampshire residents, citizens of New Hampshire, that aren't opposed to this bill. What I see are lobbyists. You've been sent here for a purpose. Consider that. Thank you.
I have a question for you, sir. At the end, are you opposing this bill?
I'm opposing the bill,
Okay,
yes.
I hear support, so I want to be sure.
I support the EFA program.
you support the
I
EFA.
oppose this bill.
Okay,
I'd like
thank
to
you
see it
very much.
expanded. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, unless I hear or see anybody else, this is the end of the hearing for Senate Bill 141. Thank you very much for coming. We have 2 bills to go, and we have 1 hour to do them. So,
You gotta work your magic.
yes, word, 1 minute per person. Good, only 4 of them, okay. You want these, right?
Yes.
So the next bill we have is Senate Bill 151. And the sponsor of that bill is Senator Waters, who I heard was on his way.
Madam Chair, Senator Waters is in another committee. We have let him know, and we believe will be en route soon.
Okay.
He's running.
He's running down.
Yeah, it's exercise. I believe you have 3 speakers on each of the remaining 2 bills, so
Yep.
we should probably go on.
Run. He's our sponsor, Senator Waters. 151 FN. Which just means it has a financial component to it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, Senator David Waters, District 4, to introduce Senate Bill 151. And having the senatorial difficulty of not being able to be in 2 places at once. Thank you for pausing for a moment so that I could get here to introduce this bill. Senate Bill 151 relative to mental health education at the simplest approach includes the words mental health in the state definition of health education. And that you'll see on page 2 in those 2 places. This is a way to ensure that mental health education is included in that curriculum and sets forth certain actions by the Department of Education to provide local school districts with the access to model methods of teaching those mental health issues. It is done that way to ensure that this does not run afoul of unfunded mandates for municipalities. We have used this model in other areas such as child sex abuse prevention education, which was also added to adequacy statutes, and also we did it more recently, a couple years ago, with outdoor education as well. So why do this? And again, recognizing that there is mention of mental health in the ed rules regarding health education. Yet I think, having served on jail car for many years, that if something is in rules, that we probably ought to have it in statute as well. So the reason for this legislation is outlined on page 1. And the findings here, I have used mostly the child Youth Risk Behavior Survey, the 2019 version. The 2021 information is starting to come out on that survey, because it always comes out a little bit late. And I will say that from what I think you'll hear from youth and from educators is that the mental health crisis in our schools has increased dramatically. Long-term trends that it was increasing, but certainly COVID has exacerbated that. So 1 in 6 U.S. youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. LGBTQ youth experience mental health disorders at a significantly higher rate, and unfortunately suicide in these areas too is something in New Hampshire that is dramatically evident. Bullying, we have some good statutes on that, bullying prevention, but we don't address in statute mental health issues related to bullying. Prevalent issues ages 12 to 18. And sadly, lines 9 and 10, suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 34 and the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And I only summarize some of what the New Hampshire Youth Risk Behavior Survey had, because as you all know, that's a very complete and in-depth survey of a lot of different issues that can be related to mental health issues as well. But here we have it. 34% of students felt sad or hopeless. 18% seriously considered attempting suicide, and 7% attempted suicide. These are in some ways a tip of an iceberg related to drug and alcohol use. New Hampshire tends to rank fairly high compared to other states on drug and alcohol use. 23% of students experience bullying on campus, 20% electronically, and just to pause from it, 10% experienced sexual violence, and 7% were physically forced to have sexual intercourse. That's among our school-age children. Schools are a really good place to do something about this. I can speak more particularly to my experience in Dover, where at the high school there has been a peer-to-peer mental health wellness group formed by students, and does really an extraordinary job. Was visited and celebrated by Senator Shaheen a couple of years ago in kind of checking in on each other and finding some ways to make sure that folks who are exhibiting the potential signs of mental difficulties can find someone to talk to. And I think, too, it's important to note at the bottom of this page here, one of the real precipitating factors for this legislation is the Governor's Youth Advisory Council on Substance Misuse and Prevention Health Education Reform report issued in November 2022, which pointed out, and students are not learning adequate health education in New Hampshire schools. As it relates to our mission of substance misuse and prevention, poor health and its lack of instruction, whether it be physical or mental, can push people towards substance misuse as an outlet. There's an undeniable overlap between mental health and substance use. People who are struggling with their mental health are more likely to use substances than those not affected by mental illness. Certainly true for adults too. Those impacted by substance use disorders are more likely to exhibit symptoms of mental health disorder. Overall, physical and mental health is hurt when individual substances, misuse substances, giving students the knowledge and resources to take charge of their health can stop this trend. As we live through what has been called a mental health crisis, New Hampshire GYAC members believe it's our responsibility to advocate for necessary changes in our school curriculum. Now, this report was received and endorsed by the governor. And I think all of us know how much our governor cares for children in general, for our schools, and particularly the mental health issue is something he's spoken out about quite frequently. And he did endorse this report that was delivered in November. In December, it was acknowledged. So back to the language of the bill, having been an educator for 44 years, I understand the challenges that educators face, and certainly the complexity of what we are asking teachers to do has increased extraordinarily into areas that were far beyond what when I first began teaching in the 1970s. So that's recognized here. But unfortunately, what we heard from youth on the legislative advisory group and testimony they brought forward is that we are failing our students in the teaching of mental health. We may hear from students, and I direct your attention particularly to a letter from Laura Lee Godfrey, who was co-chair of this group, who could not be here today to testify, but has sent you a letter. And there is a great deal of report from students that either mental health is simply not being included in health education. Unfortunately, there are cases of when it was included, but the statistics and the information provided by the teachers was out of date, and some case is absolutely erroneous. And then there are also reports about how little time mental health is included in the health curriculum, and in some ways how little attention to the health curriculum overall is given in terms of student educational hours. Well, as I mentioned, overburdened students. So what do we do about it? I think that what we can do is to recognize that we need to tighten up, that just what's in rules isn't cutting it, that we can provide some areas in legislation for the sorts of mental health curriculum and the kinds of issues that the students are telling us and mental health experts ought to be addressed in that. And then saying, okay, as the Department of Education does in many ways, that it can provide links to available resources that can be provided to the teachers, the school boards, so that this can be fulfilled without creating a financial burden on our schools. There it is. I think that, you hear me testify, I'm just another senator. I think that, for all of you, I know you spend time in your schools. I know you talk to students, and this is really one of the number one things that you're going to hear about if you visit the schools, and I think we have an opportunity to do something about it. So thank you, Madam Chair. Be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we have Narayan Sijit. And if you could keep your testimony to 5 minutes, I would appreciate it.
What?
Could you keep your testimony to 5 minutes?
Yeah.
We're running very short on time. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Narayan Sajeev, and I'm a junior at Nashua High School South. I'm here today to voice my support for SB 151, which improves mental health education for students. As a member of the Governor's Youth Advisory Council on Substance Misuse and Prevention, I collaborate with organizations to tackle substance abuse among the youth. Through reaching out to peers all across New Hampshire, we discovered the shortage of mental health education offered to students, leading us to support this bill. This bill would greatly improve students' access to the vital information they need for their mental well-being. I had the opportunity to take my health class online, but was disappointed to find a lack of emphasis on substance abuse and mental health. These are vital topics for young people and are often overlooked in the current curriculum. The lack of education on these subjects can lead to dangerous consequences later on in life. This is why I took the initiative to research and learn more about these topics on my own, but I was shocked to find that many of my peers did not do the same. The COVID-19 pandemic has only heightened the need for comprehensive mental health education in our schools. With mental health struggles on the rise, it is more important now than ever before that students receive the education they need and the access to support to navigate these challenges. At my high school, the current curriculum only requires one health class that lasts for a quarter of the year over all 4 years. This limited time frame means that the students who take the class are left with very little understanding of the subject and content matter. I firmly believe that this bill is crucial because it addresses this issue. In conclusion, comprehensive health education is vital for high school students. It not only provides accurate information, but also encourages students to engage with important issues and make informed decisions about their well-being. I strongly urge the committee to support SB 151 and ensure that high school students receive the comprehensive health education they deserve. By doing so, you will be ensuring that high school students can succeed in high school and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a printed thing Do I
That
get
would
it
be
to you
great
guys?
if we could have it. We can make copies and each one of us can get a copy. Any questions from any of the committee members? Thank you very much. Now we have Holly Stevens.
Good morning. At least I think it's still morning. Chair, Ward, and members of the committee, I will keep this short and brief. I know this is a bipartisan bill. Holly Stevens, I am the Director of Public Policy from NAMI, New Hampshire. NAMI, New Hampshire is a grassroots nonprofit organization that supports the health and wellness of Granite Staters and educates, advocates, and supports anybody affected by mental illness and suicide. You've heard a lot of statistics, so I'm only going to highlight a couple of statistics that were not mentioned, which is that in our state, 15,000 Granite Staters ages 12 to 17 have depression right now. Also wanted to mention that last year, the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the U.S. Surgeon General all declared that our kids are facing a mental health emergency. So that came from the federal government, and our own state has recognized the same, which you've heard today. Despite, as you've heard, mental health being required in the education rules, NAMI New Hampshire has also heard from several students who have said that they receive no mental health education in their health education class. We know that our youth are boarding in emergency rooms. As of yesterday, we had 12 youth in the emergency rooms. Don't have the numbers from today. It was too early for me to get those for you, but 12 were in there yesterday. So basically, you know, with the mental health crisis, this is an all hands on deck issue. So, and that includes the schools. So, having Senate Bill 151 go into effect would go a long way to help reduce stigma and support kids who either have a mental health issue or may not even know that they have a mental health issue, that they could learn about it in their health class. So NAMI New Hampshire urges you to recommend Senate Bill 151 ought to pass. I will answer any questions. I'll just end it there.
Questions? I have a question. What would be included in the mental health class? And what topics would you just discuss the diagnosis and how they present, or what would you do?
Senate Bill 151 lays out a series of topics that would be included, and NAMI New Hampshire would support that all those topics be included. And
Okay.
I won't read them to you. It is in the bill. There's a whole list of topics
It's
that
a whole list, but it looks to me like it's going to take more than an hour. But you need more time. How much time on mental health issues do you see is necessary?
That's a good question. Can I get back to the committee on that?
Sure.
I'd like to discuss it with our executive director and see, exactly what we would recommend as far as.
Too often you have a topic and you just address it, you give a lecture. You can cover all kinds of topics in the lecture, 1 hour, 1.5. But it seems to me that something like this needs to be on a regular basis. That, you just don't do it one in the first year. You need to address it over time.
Multiple times. And that's one of the things too. I think if there's any educators here, they might be able to address that as well. But I will talk with our team internally and see exactly if we would have any recommendations for that.
Okay. I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Gendro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the handout that you gave us, you said 1 in 6 U.S. youth age 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year, and 15,000 Granite Staters age 12 to 17 have depression. What are the parameters of depression? I know sometimes I get depressed if I can't have an ice cream, but and I'm kind of tongue in cheek, but what are the parameters of that Are these kids saying, I'm sad, I'm depressed? Is there medical backing for it? Or that's an awful lot of children.
It is an awful lot of children, and these statistics came from NAMI National. What I will do is I will go back to that website and find out exactly what they're using for criteria.
Thank you.
My assumption would be that it would be the DSM criteria, but I don't want to say that without knowing for sure.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to say something about this particular bill? Yeah, did you sign up or?
I thought I signed on the sheet, but maybe it just hasn't.
Okay,
gone.
just tell us your name.
Sorry, my name is Emma Savini. I'm the Children's Behavioral Health Policy Coordinator at New Futures. New Futures is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that advocates, educates, and collaborates for the health and wellness of all Granite Staters. I'll keep it super brief because I'm of the same mind as NAMI New Hampshire. We are in full support of this bill. Giving students the space to learn about these mental health topics, have the space to safely discuss them and learn about them with their peers and how to help support both themselves and their peers is an excellent tool in their arsenal to help combat the mental health crisis that we're seeing and that the U.S. Surgeon General has acknowledged as well. Senate Bill 151 would make this a requirement in schools so that all of our students are able to have access to the same types of tools, same learning procedures and topics about mental health that are age appropriate, safe for students, and ensure that these students have the techniques necessary to help minimize their own mental health issues or reach out to a trusted adult if they realize that they're in over their heads. And then this education will help additionally give them the tools to recognize when this is an issue they should be going to an adult with. I'm happy to take any questions or give more information to the committee after the fact is necessary.
Questions? Senator Gendreau?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question that I thought of too, and it goes back to was it Emily that was sharing, no, Holly was sharing with us. If it's identified that a child or student has depression, are the parents notified?
I don't believe that's part of this bill, is a notification to the parents piece, and I can absolutely be corrected by somebody whom I know in the audience. But my understanding is that the schools have a pretty open and flexible policy with parents to discuss these matters. But I don't know on a school-to-school basis or district-to-district basis what the policies are.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience? Okay, do you have a copy of resources that you'd like to share with us? Senator Waters?
Yeah. You can make copies. That's just for you to have.
Oh, okay.
About the
Thank-
resources that are
Thank you
available
very much.
online.
Nobody else on Senate Bill 151? The hearing on that bill is closed. And we are now taking up Senate Bill 152.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator David Waters, District 4, to introduce Senate Bill 152 relative to New Hampshire workforce training programs. I don't think I need to remind any of our colleagues about the issues around workforce training that the state is facing, and this is an attempt to address a couple of them. I'm used to talking about offshore wind in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and also as chair of the New Hampshire Commission on Offshore Wind and Port Development. But since the bill has two parts, one is on marine trades. I think I'll talk about that for a moment, and then I will turn to the overall topic of offshore wind and why we need to do that part of the bill. The first part of the let me just talk first about it. It's a little bit later on in the excuse me, where is it? Just right at the start of the bill, excuse me. This request for marine trades pathways at a regional career and technology center came originally from the from Wolfboro, the Lakes Region Community Technical Education Center. There's a great need, all the marinas and other entities there, to get people into marine trades. Their workforce is aging out. It's a growth industry, of course, for marine trades. Is more small engine oriented, and there is an interest currently in the Wolfboro program in the Lakes region, and also at the community college to develop pathways and programs. So what we do in legislation here is to empower the Department of Education through its director, Jeff Beard of Career and Technical Education, and then through Commissioner Ada Blue, both of whom I've talked extensively about this bill, and the CTE Advisory Council. We've talked about this as well and had presentations. So what this will do is it'll establish a marine trades pathway at a regional career technical technology center. And I say a regional one because I suspect there will be an interest in a program down the Seacoast area as well, because the marinas there are facing some of the same issues. And then ask the CTE program, the state director, to work with these local entities on how such a center will get, such a pathway will get established, what existing facilities can be used at the CTE or at the community college, and then most particularly to coordinate with businesses and industries related to marine trades who might well be willing to fund some of this development, especially since we have the tax credit program for those kinds of contributions by businesses. It also, in the, section 2 there, does have some language about how much of Perkins can be used for incentive programs. There may be some interest in the department. They're now doing about 10%, and Commissioner Edelblu thinks that's probably about right for us to take 10% of that Perkins funding that we get annually and to use that as an incentive fund to promote various programs. But I thought it might be useful to have it in language that we could go up to the 15% that is allowed federally. So now let me turn to the larger part of workforce development here. Offshore wind industry is moving forward with great momentum in the Gulf of Maine. The Governor Sununu called for the establishment of the Gulf of Maine Task Force, comprised of New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts. I think it's 3 years ago now, and the Bureau of Energy Ocean Energy Management accepted Governor Sununu's request and has established the Gulf of Maine Task Force. It has been working with great speed to develop offshore wind in the Gulf of Maine. 2 weeks ago, it released its next version of call maps identifying areas in the Gulf of Maine. The intent is for there to be an auction for those call areas in the third quarter of 2024, which in this industry is just tomorrow. Let me talk a little bit about the scale that we're addressing here. The first 3 projects in the first 3 areas identified, maybe 3.6 gigawatts in that area. That is about 2.5 to 3 Seabrooks, maybe enough to power 1.5 million homes. This power will transform our source of energy by providing relatively inexpensive, undercutting the price of other forms of energy, most likely, for the state of New Hampshire. It's estimated that it's about a $3 to $5 billion construction phase. And then you look at the supply chain for this development and others that are happening along the East Coast, about a $12 to $15 billion supply chain. So this is big big industry, big needs, and big opportunity for New Hampshire businesses and for a labor force. The issue for New Hampshire is how do we help make New Hampshire business ready, business friendly, so that we can attract that industry investment here. The industry is investing tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in workforce training along the East Coast and now out in Oregon and California to meet the goals of offshore wind development. Often those have been done through power purchase agreements, which our state does not have and is not likely to do. But there's something new here as well, that the Biden administration requires now for any auction, as was recently done off the coast of California, that about 5% of the auction price be included for workforce development. Now, the auctions came in at about $160 to $175 million for each of the kind of equivalent to what we're going to do here. So potentially tens of millions of dollars will be available through federal sources from the developers for workforce training. So what do we have to do to get ready? I've worked on this legislation with the Department of Education, the CTEs, the community colleges, with the unions, and with the industry itself to ask that question, what do we need to do to get ready to train the workforce and attract your dollars here so that it's New Hampshire workers who get jobs and not just Massachusetts and Maine ones. So the bill does a couple of things. First, it establishes a workforce development and innovation fund. This would be a vehicle to receive funding from industry or from the federal government or potentially even from the state if we chose to do so for workforce training. Do note that the fund does not limit its use to offshore wind. I think we need a vehicle for this kind of funding to come in to train other workers in our state. And we don't have something like this. And so this fund would be, I think, an extraordinary tool to let us move forward that funding that can come in for workforce training. I do particularly focus on the Gulf of Maine offshore wind auctions because I know there will be an allocation to the state of New Hampshire and there will be contributions from businesses and industries who need to get their workers trained. And I think it belongs in the Department of Education, and the commissioner would have the authority to work with an advisory council to decide how to use that funding to set up which programs to fund. So that's why you see down at the bottom of page 1 there, the consultation the commissioner will take. Business Industry Association, let me note, they're a huge supporter of offshore wind as well. CTE directors, Labor Department, Community College of System in New Hampshire, and others on workforce needs that might be met through innovative training programs. And then it sets up a workforce training center committee. And here it seemed like the players that are involved, and I have spoken with about their desire to be involved in workforce training here. So you see the list here. You will find that there is an amendment suggested by Department of Environmental Services, who was referenced in E, the coastal program. And they thought it would be much better to have the New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire Sea Grant program designated to that. And I'll tell you why. And I spoke with the president of UNH yesterday about this, and I've spoken to Eric Chapman, who's the director of that. Under federal statute, the Sea Grant programs in the various states are meant to be the vehicles for workforce development for offshore wind and other areas as well. So DES thinks they should have that seat at this table. I also will note, as President Dean pointed out yesterday, that not just the University of New Hampshire, but other state campuses here have extraordinary programs related to marine research. We may be the best undersea mapping program in the world at the University of New Hampshire, and in other areas too of determining environmental issues, fisheries, and so on, that they're a go-to place. So it'd be good for them to have a seat at the table there. You'll notice here too the inclusion of Great Bay Community College, the New Hampshire Port Authority, the Chamber of Commerce, and Granite Shore Power. Well, why are those folks on this? There is a great interest in establishing a workforce training center that would be in the Portsmouth area. That is going to be the focus for New Hampshire of offshore wind development. We are putting tens of millions of dollars into expanding the dock at the port to handle this and other industries. The basin widening has taken place by the Army Corps of Engineers. Dredging has taken place, so we're ready to go for this industry there. And Cheryl Lesser, president of Great Bay Community College, said, you know, it really makes sense, rather than having a workforce training center be up at our campus, to have it right there at the port, because that's where the jobs are going to be. So there's opportunities perhaps at the port, but even more likely perhaps at Granite Shore Power. It has, you know, a couple hundred acres there just north of the port in Newington. There's an existing power plant there. They have a very heavy lift capacity at their dock, which is superior to what we have at the state dock, as I understand it, and also a great interest there in moving towards services could be provided to onshore power, or if hydrogen is a part of offshore wind development as a storage fuel, which I think it's likely to be, that we could have hydrogen infrastructure, again, funded by tens of billions of dollars of federal money that's in the IRA for hydrogen infrastructure. There's also some possibilities of some of the facilities out at the Newington Mall that are now empty, being used as a workforce training center. And for all these reasons, the unions, Granite Shore Power, Great Bay Community College, and others, and you know, the Portsmouth Chamber are included here because we think that's where this center will be created. So bottom of the bill, then we end up by saying, what are their duties? To look at these staffing needs and what we need to do. And I think that, you know, the main message I want to come away with this bill is to say to the industry, we're open for business. This would be an extraordinarily important signal. We've heard this from the industry, that if they see that we have some skin in the game, that we have the capacity, as we head with Safran Albany up in Rochester, to create workforce training centers, that we will attract investment. So sorry to go on for song, but get me start talking about offshore wind and I get windy. But thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Waters. Any questions from the committee members? I have a question. I don't see any legislative members on this committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that given the result of the bill that was passed last year, that requiring that the majority of any commission be set up be legislators, that we are seeing problems created by that. That if you have, you know, 7 or 8 or 9 people on a committee, if it's a commission, you've got to have 7 or 8 or 9 legislators. I also think philosophically, look, we empower our state agencies, our port, our community colleges, our CTEs to do this work. And so I think that they're going to report to us. They can't do anything with us, our legislative authority, but I think they can get the job done. And we can certainly ask them what's going on, but I think sometimes it's maybe good to let them do their job and not have to have 8 or 9 legislators added to this.
I'm delighted we don't have to be on it because we have enough commissions.
Me too.
So we're going to get a report every November 1st about
Right.
what has transpired. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Oh, Senator Lang.
No,
has a-
I just have a question about funding. So it looks like there's absolutely $0 appropriated for this anywhere. And it also looks, if I understand the funding source that is conceived, it's the idea of the offshore lease at the federal level will push money back down to Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. I mean, Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. And that funding would be dedicated for this purpose and no other purpose.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. That certainly is the experience in other states, and I anticipate it when they have the auctions next year, that will be a piece of it. I will add, though, that there are also, under the IRA Act and other acts, there is substantial funding for workforce development related to clean energy development. So, and then the industry itself, you know, the unions, other industries, they put a lot of money into workforce training, right? Into apprenticeship programs. So I think the funding is going to be there. If the state decides it wants to put some money into the fund, fine. But, you know, I very purposely said no fiscal note here. This is, set it up and, the funding I think will be there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we have John Wally. I'm just fine, thank you.
I have Jeremiah Burke with me also. We're both representing the New Hampshire Marine Trades Association.
So we got 2 for 1.
2 for 1. You wanted to
Okay.
be efficient, so that's what we're here for.
Excellent.
We represent the Marine Trades Association, and we're dedicated to protecting the boaters' rights, enhancing tourism in the state of New Hampshire, and making sure to be stewards for clean water and safe waterways. In the state of New Hampshire, we provide about $1.2 billion in tourism, and we represent businesses of about 278 businesses that provide about 6,800 jobs in the state of New Hampshire. And our challenge is that we need people that are trained mechanics and can work within our businesses to help continue to provide the tourism dollars and support our 105,000 registrations for boaters in 2022. So that is our challenge. So we support Senate Bill 152 100% because we see that our ages of our technicians, our staffing are continuing to get older and older and older. And we have found that there is an opportunity to find young people that want to get involved in marine businesses, but we need pathways to get them involved early and not late. Because once they get involved into the colleges, they kind of already get focused onto a certain track. And we see an opportunity at a younger age and grow from there. So Jeremiah can speak more to that.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to just take you down a quick experience that I've had as part of kind of speaking to this point. So I became general manager of Goodhue Boat Company in Wolfboro about 5 years ago, and immediately was faced with workforce challenges. Goodhue has been in business since 1903. And I'm sure there's been challenges over all the years, but like every other industry, we have many challenges in finding trained workforce. So I started looking where can I find people? And first thought was, well, let me go to the Lakes Region Technology Center, a vocational school right here in town. And there's not a marine program in that school. And so it dawned on me, why is this the Lakes region and there is no Marine Technology Center to provide that type of education for students at an earlier age? I started looking at other places within the state and couldn't find any. So I found one in a neighboring state and went and toured it and contacted them and said, hey, what did you do to start this? I've been involved with the Lakes Region Technology Center there in Wolfboro, hosting field trips to the marina, being a part of a career day, ongoing throughout all of this. One of the challenges that I thought, well, how do I overcome this? I'm not an educator. I went to school at that school, but I don't know how to start a program. So I've been working with the principal there frequently. When I went to the school in Maine, I discovered that the curriculum exists for a vocational school at the high school level. And textbooks, workbooks, and it's all done by American Boat and Yacht Council, which is an accreditation organization well known within the marina industry. So there is all of this reasons with the industry that we've seen in the time that we're in now. Boating, recreational boating has exploded, and the need for this workforce is growing continually. And without having a place to really attract the students at an earlier age, we're struggling to find the workforce. It exists. The community college, Lakes Region Community College, has a program which struggles to fill enrollment because there's not anything feeding it from the earlier level. We also rely on that program at the Lakes Region Community College because we send our technicians and provide training that they host at that facility as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or either one of us.
Questions? Okay, I have a question. So you said, if I understood you right, there are programs on the high school level in marine technicians, and that will go into the CTEs or the community college?
So there is a program in Maine. American Boat and Yacht Council has the curriculum established, textbooks, all of that available to be used. A technology school would just need to adopt the curriculum into their program to be able to support, and have those. The resources are there. The resources are there from the Marine Trades Association, are there to support it. And, but it just doesn't exist.
So you're going to bring that into a community college?
So Lakes Region Community College has a program. Lakes Region Technology Center at the high school in Wolfboro does not. So the path is there for students to graduate from the high school, go to the community college. And in fact, we had a former employee who passed away. We've had a scholarship foundation set up in his name, that can be applied towards these students moving on and furthering their education. Additionally, support from the Marine Trades Association, within that effort as well.
So you said, what does a marine technician do? I always think of marine biology, that's what comes to mind, but what kinds of stuff do they do?
Yeah, absolutely. Manufacturers all over the country and world are building boats of all different types and kinds. So marine technicians will service, repair, warranty through the manufacturer. They will take the boat out, they'll test it, they'll water test it, check the systems, all these things that when a customer or somebody gets into the boat, whether they're renting it or they're buying it, they get in there and just like you turn your car key on, you turn your boat key on, and you start moving forward. They're there to help support, the industry and the customers and people that enjoy, boating.
Okay. I was thinking about I heard about marine technicians, and the next thing was offshore wind. Are these marine technicians being able to work on the offshore wind in any projects of it?
I don't know that I can speak to offshore wind particularly.
No, I was
However,
just curious because
yeah.
these two things came in the same bill. Are we doing something with marine technicians because they're going to be able to help out or get a job or do something?
I would imagine that if you have qualification or certified as a marine technician, you can go just about anywhere and find employment, throughout any marine type industry, including any type of program that's set up for offshore wind transportation back and forth. I mean, certainly there's got to be, there's a need there for that.
Okay, so they're not limited to boats and yachts.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Senator Lang.
Thank you. So if I understand what we just said was you're speaking to sections 1 through 10 in the bill, which is about the CTE program, the marine trade program, not necessarily anything about the offshore wind. It's that establishment of a pathway program for marine trades in the high schools is what you're speaking to.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak on this bill? If not, we are finished with all the bills for today. Appreciate you all coming, and have a safe drive home. Thank you very much.
Yeah. What they're still working on it.
I think we're gonna take this today.